Yo, what's going on guys? HyperX here, and today I want to talk about my hands-on time with the First Descendant. I recently had a chance to go hands-on with an early build of the game. As is always the case, whenever I get to play these early, this is of course a work-in-progress build. Things are still subject to change, there will be balancing changes, performance changes, all that stuff, so this is definitely not a final build. And while I had a chance to play for quite a few hours, I of course did not get to experience the whole game, so I don't know what the end game of this game looks like. I don't necessarily know how much content there's going to be. I haven't got any gauge on the overall scope of the game, but today I can at least talk about how it feels to play, some of the activities I got to experience, and some of the systems that are in place in this game. So if you guys do enjoy this, a like would be super appreciated. Comment down below, let me know if you guys have any questions, let me know what you think about this, and of course do be sure to keep it locked because we have got plenty more coming your way, so if you do want to see more from this game outside of my impressions video, then do keep it locked on the channel. Also, for the purpose of this video is in ultra wide because that's what I was playing in, but we will also have some regular resolution gameplay coming your way as well. So, to begin with, in case you guys have not been following, what is the First Descendant? Well, this is a game that was originally revealed as Project Magnum, now called the First Descendant. It is a free third-person cooperative action RPG shooter with, of course, lots of loot thrown in and 4-player co-op. Of course, if you guys have played games like this before, then obvious comparisons would be things like Outriders, Division, Anthem, admittedly not necessarily a thing that people want to be compared to, but generally speaking, we are talking about things in the third-person looter shooter genre. So while of course one of the dominant titles in the looter shooter space is Destiny, generally speaking, given the third person nature, I won't make as many comparisons to that. But largely speaking, you guys know what to expect. You go out into the world, shoot some bad guys, get some loot, upgrade your gear, shoot more bad guys, repeat the cycle. It's kind of how these games go. Also, this game has a grappling hook, and I've said time and time again, your boy loves grappling hooks, and grappling is hella satisfying. But let's talk about some of the gameplay systems. I will say there are some things in this game that I really enjoyed. However, there are some things that I didn't enjoy so much and some things that I do hope they change or sort of concerns for the future. So I will touch on both the positives and the negatives. But let's start with some of the fun stuff. So first things first, the moment-to-moment gameplay. Ultimately, when you play these games, it's all about how does it feel. The game has a variety of different classes to choose from. I don't know how many classes there will be in the full game, and given the nature in which you obtain these, it's kind of almost sort of somewhat comparable to like Warframe, where in order to get new heroes, new characters, new sort of classes, you actually need to gather some resources, gather some materials, and then basically research them in order to unlock them for later use. So in that regard, Warframe is definitely an obvious comparison point. And of course, this could therefore be how maybe later on they expand the game, because again, this is going to be a free-to-play game, but I do not know what the monetization model is going to be. I didn't get a chance to experience that or see that really in-game. There are, of course, various different currency sources, but at this stage, I don't really have any clarity on how or what you will be paying for. But there are, of course, lots of classes that you can unlock and research, so maybe that's something that'll be sort of worked into that aspect of the game, or maybe it's something else entirely. It could just be cosmetic skins. Honestly, I don't know. But moment-to-moment gameplay feels really fun, and that was one of the initial things that I really sort of clicked with, because conversely, a while ago, I of course played Outriders, and Outriders is a game that personally I didn't really gel with. I know some people really enjoy it, and that's completely fine. For me, it didn't really click because when I played Outriders, the moment-to-moment gameplay in that one just didn't feel that great. I didn't really get much feedback from a lot of the combat, so when I was using abilities and guns, it didn't really feel that great to me, and for that reason I had a huge disconnect with the game, so I didn't really play it. But this one actually does feel nice. When you look at the classes, they have a range of skills available. You have sort of 4 different skills which you can cycle between, and you also have a passive skill, and one of these skills is kind of like an ultimate ability. So they recharge pretty fast, you use them relatively frequently, so it is definitely designed as sort of a game where you are, shooting regularly, but also regularly using your abilities. And of course, throughout the classes, there are various different styles. There's more defensive ones that definitely offer more support to your team. There are more sort of offensive ones. There was even one class that had some sort of healing elements to them. Obviously in this gameplay, I kind of stuck with a few, but there are definitely a lot to choose from. What I will say is initially, sort of when it came to the ability stuff, I don't know whether this was just sped up for the time that we were playing, but you unlock the abilities pretty quickly, which in and of itself is good because you want to have things to use. But once you got to the point where you had unlocked those abilities, there didn't appear to be any new abilities to unlock after that point. What you would do is if you continue to level up, you would unlock a higher version, like a higher upgraded version of your primary ability, but that is one of those things that early on can sometimes get a little bit boring or sort of lackluster, because of course if you unlock, your 4 or 5 abilities that you'll have for the rest of the game in the first hour or two, then after that point when you're playing for the next 10, 20, 30, 50, maybe 100 hours, you don't really get to unlock much more. Of course, this is a loot-driven game, so you get new weapons, you'll get new things to like slot into your gear, but from an ability point of view, there didn't appear to be that much discovery beyond the sort of first 4 that you unlock. But again, this could just be one of those things that I have yet to see. Keep in mind, it is quite difficult when you jump into these hands-on builds. You only get to experience a portion of the game, so it's hard to sort of make these definitive statements when I simply just don't know. But when you are exploring your way around the world, of course, the world itself does look quite nice. The maps are not huge. They are sort of the zones that you will load into. There are different biomes, so they do visually look quite different. And of course, the ability to grapple onto almost anything is really nice because, of course, from a exploration point of view, you can just zip your way around. You can zip into enemies, different things like that. That is really fun. And again, visually, the game looks very, very nice. Lots of cool particle effects, lots of nice things in motion. It is a very stunning looking game. And again, as mentioned, given the sort of loot component, you will be cycling through different weapons. The weapons themselves are really cool, and of course, once you get to some of the later game parts, you do get some visually quite distinctive weapons. There's also some really cool weapons. You have things like machine guns, rocket launchers, snipers, DMRs, assault rifles, shotguns, SMGs, lots of things to choose from, so weapon variety was definitely there. When it came to the wider gear stuff, I will say, again, from what I got to experience, there was a component where you have lots of runes that you can basically slot into your gear, and effectively the runes will synergize with different types of weapons. Now this in and of itself is quite cool because it allows you to build around a particular playstyle, build around sort of a build, so to speak. What I will say is my only one gripe with these kinds of games when you get a lot of these things you can equip is that a lot of the time when they don't change your appearance, or when the majority of your gear are things you equip but simply don't see, that to me is something that personally I don't enjoy as much. Like, I completely get not everything needs to change your appearance, but from my time playing, when I changed weapons, obviously that changed the way it looks, but my character remained the same, and then I basically spent the rest of my time slotting in runes or different artifacts or different things to go into slots, which will change my stats, but had no impact on the way that I looked. I don't know whether there is a way later on to, get different costumes or things like that, and of course maybe that's something they'll factor into something completely separate. But when I do spend most of my time grinding for gear and runes, a lot of which don't change the way that my character looks, that for me personally was a bit of a letdown. I really like it in games like these where you have things like chest pieces, pauldrons, gloves, legs, stuff like that, so that when you actually equip them, you do find that your gear is changing the way you look. But again, that could be a personal preference. However, outside of that, what I will say is when it comes to one of the things that I didn't enjoy as much, that was just down to the overall mission variety. Now keep in mind, in these kinds of games, it's fair to say that it's expected that you do the same thing quite a lot of the time. I mean, it is a looter shooter. In these kinds of games, you go out, you shoot enemies, you loot them, you repeat the cycle. So I'm not necessarily looking for crazy set pieces or ridiculously different missions every single time I go out. But what I will say is, in this game, or at least in the time that I had playing, there was a very slim mission variety, to the point where I literally, for the most part, went out, activated a beacon, went and shot some enemies, activated another beacon, defended a point, shot more enemies, activated another beacon, shot more enemies. It definitely got to the point where, while the game was fun to play and the moment-to-moment gameplay felt really satisfying, the actual engagement with the enemies, the actual activities we got to take part in, definitely got boring quite quickly. Now again, that is a personal preference. Some people really enjoy doing the same thing over and over again, and that's completely fine. Like, ultimately, if you play these games for a long time, that's what you're going to be doing. So if you find that the gameplay is super satisfying, it feels really good, and you don't mind doing 100 wave defenses, that's completely cool. For me personally though, I definitely got to the point where after playing for say 5-6 hours, I was definitely starting to feel a little bit tired of some of those activities. However, with that being said, that's not the only thing in the game. The game does also have an interesting sort of boss mode as well, where you load into this sort of almost like VR scenario, this sort of strange world, so to speak, and this boss spawns in, and you then have these cool mechanics, and the boss fights are definitely one of these sort of standout features in this game. Admittedly, we didn't get to fight too many, and some of them were reskins of an earlier boss, but when you do fight these bosses, they do actually have mechanics. They'll have sort of almost wipe mechanics in some of them. They'll have things you'll need to sort of watch out for. They even have a sort of clamber mechanic where you can actually get on the side, shoot off some weak points, and then clamber onto them and sort of attack a weak point to like knock them down. So that was actually really, really cool. So there's definitely some interesting elements, and they are definitely more of a spectacle. I will say, from my time playing, what would have been cool is to actually see these bosses in the world. And again, maybe that is something that does happen, but I just didn't get to experience it. But I just think it would be super cool if you're just wandering around the world doing some missions, and then suddenly you find this giant boss just like in the middle of the field, and you're like, oh, I need to stop what I'm doing and fight them. That could be awesome. But the boss mode itself definitely was awesome, and some of them were super challenging. There were a few that we were actually not able to defeat just because we got completely and utterly wiped. So there definitely is an interesting sort of mix of things, but again, I would personally like to see a bit more mission variety and a few more things to do. But again, that could be one of those things where sometimes in these types of games, you play through the sort of quote-unquote story, and you play through the campaign, and once you get to the end and the sort of end game stuff opens up, then you really sort of get a feel for what else there is available in the game. So it could just be that I simply haven't experienced it yet. Again, I only got to play for a short period of time, and we only had access to a few different things. We started off with a brand new character, and later on we were able to jump in with a boosted character at a sort of higher level. But again, I haven't got to experience what the game has to offer at the end, so it could just be that I simply haven't seen it yet. And I have, of course, spoken to different people that have been playing this as well. Some people have been really enjoying it because, of course, they are, like that sort of format. Other people have definitely found things quite similar to us, so you guys are going to definitely have to make your mind up on that regard. But for the time being, that is pretty much it. From my time playing so far, I definitely enjoyed aspects of the game. I definitely enjoyed the moment-to-moment gameplay. It definitely felt fun to play. The actual shooting, the jumping around, using the abilities was enjoyable, but the actual content itself, outside of that, did get quite repetitive for me, so that definitely does leave me with more questions. I was kind of hoping going hands-on would answer a lot of those questions, but I do feel like at the end of my hands-on session, I just have even more questions. So at this stage, I'm still going to need to wait and see more. I definitely will still be watching this game because I did still enjoy my time playing it, but at this stage, it's hard to know whether it's something that I will 100% dive into and spend a lot of time playing, or whether it's something that I would invest a few hours into and then maybe not stick at for a long time. That much we're going to have to wait and see. Anyway, for the time being, that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully it's given you some context. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. If you've missed some of the recent videos, be sure to check out one of these ones and keep it locked for plenty more.